Okay, and hello, my name is Martin, and today we're going to be creating a rotating turret. So we're going to be working off of our Project 4 zombie. Let's click on that and copy. Dang it. Just Control C, then come down here and hit Control V. Okay, let's go ahead and rename this. Shooting turret. And let's, oops, it's not Project 4, is it? Okay, Project 5. And Project 5 score. Okay, so let's go ahead and open that up. All right, so from here what we're going to do is we need to copy the zombie cube. So right click, folder, shooting turret, double, oh, not in there, I did that again. Let's go to the zombie, copy, or right click on it, Control C, evil cubes, shooting turret, Control B. Okay, once we're in there, we can double, oh, you know what, we should probably rename this before we start doing anything, so let's go ahead and rename it. All right, I feel better about that. Let's double click and let's come in here. Now we see all the information that we have from the moving zombie. So as far as it being able to get hit and it being able to be collided into, those things were already there. This piece of code, remember, was for getting it to walk, and we're actually going to use, we're going to break this code up, and this is what we're going to start our rotating, because essentially it's the same thing. We are casting once we see the pawn, we are casting ourselves, and instead of it being the AI movement, we're going to cut those out. We are going to create a sequence because we do want a couple of things. We want it to rotate and we want it to shoot. So let's go ahead and create a sequence. All right, once we've got the sequence there, the first node off the sequence is going to be set actor rotation. So set actor rotation, there it is. Okay, this is going to allow the pawn to turn. What we need to do is find look at rotation. So for new rotation, we're going to type in find look at rotation, and so that's going to cause our character to look at something else to get its rotation cues from. What we want to do is get the actor's location. All right, which would be us, and then we want to connect that to another get actor location. And on the second one, we are going to connect that to first person character. Okay, so let me clean that up a little bit so it looks a little nicer. Let's move that down a bit. Let's move this up here. And let's move that there. And we'll move that there. That looks a lot cleaner. Okay, so once the pawn sees something, it's going to be looking for the first person character. It's going to be getting the first person's character information from here, and that's what it's going to be looking at to rotate. And it's going to be looking at also where the actor was, so where he is now and where he was. Okay. From there, let's go ahead and create our branch off of the sequence. Okay, and I'm going to bring it way. Oops, sorry. And I want to bring it. I want to bring it way down there because this is actually where we're going to start creating the projectile that we're going to be using. So we will be creating a projectile from scratch. So let's click there and type in branch because we are going to need a conditional statement to get this working. we are also going to need a variable. So let's type in the variable, or the plus sign for variable. It is going to stay a Boolean. This time we need this the Boolean to be called spawn projectile, so we know what it is. No spaces. Projectile. All right. So there's our now spawn projectile, and that's going to be the condition that we're going to drag in. So we're going to grab the spawn projectile, drag it into our event graph, hit get, and plug that into our condition. Now from there, what we need to do is actually spawn an actor, which is going to be the projectile itself, right? So we're going to have set to a true condition, and this is going to be spawn actor, sorry. And we are looking for spawn actor. Actually, just a spawn actor. Yep, sorry. We're looking for just the spawn actor. What we're going to do is we're actually going to add the projectile to this class. So from here, we're going to type in first person projectile. There it is. And now it will be spawning that little orange ball that we keep seeing, right? Okay, so the next thing we need to do is create a location that the projectile is going to be spawning from. Don't mind the error message here. I accidentally hit the compile button and that this part of the code's not finished, so that's why it's saying error. To do this, let's go to our viewport. In our viewport, we're going to go over to Components panel, add a component, and here we're going to create a scene component. All right, and we don't want the first two. We actually want this one underneath utility, so let's click that. And let's go ahead and call this what it's going to be, which is projectile. Move that out of the way so I can see what I'm spelling. Projectile spawn location. All right. Okay, if that's the case, we'll just call it that. All right. Now that we have that, let's go ahead and click on it so that we can actually grab it, and let's move that out and a little bit in front of the cube. So now the cube, when it fires, it will actually be firing from directly in front of the cube. Okay, so now that we have that, let's go back to our, now the reason why we did that obviously was so that way we could click on this and actually have it come up and out. Remember that the cube has certain conditions as far as how it deals with other things that are colliding with it. So you want to make sure that this is not going to, you know, self-explode the cube when it shoots this projectile. So that's why we're grabbing the projectile location and moving it out in front of the cube. So then that way it won't be, it won't cause us to cause the rotating turret to self-explode. So now let's go to event graph and let's finish writing this out. So now that we actually have the spawn projectile location, let's click out of this and type in get world transform. So get world transform, and now we actually have projectile spawn location as one of the options. So let's drag that out and let's make it look a little prettier. Okay, so the next part of this that we need to do is create the add impulse, which is going to keep creating these things. The spawning of the pawns, or of the projectiles themselves. So let's click off of the execute and type in add impulse. Okay, and this is going to be add impulse sphere. So we want this to be a circle and not a cube. And from here, let's grab this, and the target should be connected to the return value. The other thing that we also need to generate is the which direction this is going to be shooting out of, right? So we actually have to create where the impulses are coming from. So let's drag off of the impulse itself and type in vector. Oh, vector times vector. Sorry. There it is. Vector times vector. Okay, so let's go ahead and click that in. So you'll notice that these are now location points, right? Because the impulse was a location point. So we want to make sure that these are going forward. So let's type in get forward vector. All right, there it is. And we want this to be from the cube. So it'll be projecting itself out from the cube. So let's drag that out so it looks a little prettier. Okay, and the bottom part of this is going to be another variable. So we need to type in a variable. So let's type in amount. So our shooting amount. And this is going to be a green vector. So it's going to be a float. So let's type this in and we'll call this shoot amount. Okay, with that there, we're going to plug this into the bottom. So drag shoot amount onto get, and then let's plug this into there. And then we'll get this funny little box, which is converting it from a variable to a location. Okay, so that would be the part of the impulse. Now, the other thing that we also want to do is we don't want this thing to just keep shooting at random. We want it to have like little bursts and wait and bursts and wait. And we can also control how many of the projectiles it shoots out during this burst, or how rapidly it's going to pull out these projectiles at burst. So what we want to do is actually get the spawn projectile variable, push it here, and let's do set spawn projectile, so then that way we can actually put some variables in here. And let's get it to go there. So it's spawning the projectile, or it's making a version of this. Then we're going to have it delay. So we're going to click out and type in delay. And this will be where we can actually change the amount of how rapidly it shoots at us. And then from there, we wanted to once again do the spawn projectile. Oh, sorry, we could just do that from here. So we'll grab that, drop it, put set projectile, and plug this into the front of that equation. So let's, 0.2 is very fast. I mean, it'd be like a rapid fire deal. So let's make it every 2 seconds. And if I'm not mistaken, we should have a rotating turret now that is shooting at us. So surely there are some things that we have forgot, but let's see how far we've gotten. Let's go ahead and hit compile and save. And let's go test this guy out. All right, zoom out. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of some of the other cubes for now. We don't need them on the screen. Okay, I somehow got rid of my floor while I was getting rid of my pawns. So let me delete those, and now I have my floor back, and let me put my rotating turret, rotate this around to where it sees us, and let's see what happens now. So you can see the rotation is taking place. Now the only problem is that it is actually not shooting anything at us. Okay, very good. Let's get that fixed up. I knew I'd forgotten something. Okay, so let's see what we missed. Let's double click on shooting turret. And the first thing we should check out is to look at our variables. And well, there's our first problem. Is this is the reason why it's not shooting anything, because we are using a branch condition, which means that on the condition, if it's true, then we get the shooting. Well, it wasn't true. If we click in this box, this makes it a default value of yes as opposed to a default value of no. So right off the bat, we had shot ourselves in the foot. Not to use a pun or a pawn. So that was the first problem. The second problem that we have, it's not really a problem, but I sort of like this. I like the ability of this to speed up or slow down. So let's change the velocity so that way it doesn't look like a stream. It kind of cuts in and out. The other thing we can do is it was this button right here. And the speaking of variables, the last thing we need to do is go into the shooting amount, and we actually have nothing to shoot. We have no default shots. So let's type in 10, which will be more than enough because we're going to be running out. We'll be reinstating the bullets every 2/10 of a second. So we should theoretically get a stream of bullets that keep coming out. So with those changes made, let's hit compile and save, and let's go see if this actually works now. So let's push play, and let's run towards. Yep, we are getting the deal to shoot us. Aha! Now, two things are happening there. Well, I want you to see that. Two things are happening there. First, that the projectile, once it gets exploded, keeps shooting projectiles, so we actually need to get rid of that, the spawning location for the projectiles. And the other thing, let's just double check and see, is that it actually was able to shoot itself. So let's see if we can't get it to hit itself. There it is, finally. Okay. So it caused itself to explode. So we need to fix those two problems. The first problem is the respawning that keeps happening. And actually, let me see if there isn't just one more. Well, yeah, the respawning is going to cause the us not to be able to walk through. So let's get those two things fixed up. Basically what we need to do is we need to destroy the spawn location. We already have something in our code that is destroying things for us, and that would actually be this on-hit component. So we can continue to use this piece right here just as another sequence. So then that way, once the pawn gets destroyed, we actually wanted to get rid of the spawn locations. So I'm actually going to just move these up a little bit. And to get this to work, we're going to add another pin, and we're going to drag out from the pin. And from here, we're going to say destroy. If I could spell destroy. Could destroy component. So destroy component. And we need this to be the spawn projectile spawn location. So now what should happen is that when the pawn or when the moving turret gets hit, it won't keep respawning and shooting stuff at us. Let's see if that's enough. Let's hit compile and save, and let's go see if we've gotten that problem fixed. So now we have to walk further. So it's and there it is. So we have no remnants of the cube left, and we don't have anything shooting or spawning at us. So now let's get rid of the second problem. Okay, so to get rid of that second problem, which is the ball bouncing off the wall and then hitting the cube again, or the turret, what we need to do is right-click, go into Blueprint class. We are going to type in first-person projectile. Or you know what? How about we just type in projectile? There it is. Okay, so with that there, let's go ahead and call this turret. And it's saved on me, so hold on. Turret projectile. Okay, and with that there, we can now add separate properties to this projectile than to our projectile. Our projectile will continue to be something that bounces, that acts very much the way it did before, and on this one, it will change the way it acts. So let's double click on there to open up its blueprint folder. And what we want to do is go into projectile inherited. So let's click there. Okay, so once in the details panel for the projectile inherited, or for the projectile information, you can actually come in here and do something like should bounce. We could tell it not to bounce. We could tell it to bounce less times. So this number I think is originally 6. I'm going to move that down to 1. Let's put it back to the original. Nope, it was normally at 5. So I'm going to tell it I only want this thing to bounce once, and that's it. So let's go ahead and hit compile and save. And before we test this, we also need to do something to the turret itself. The turret itself is still shooting the first person projectile. We need to go ahead and replace this. So let's click there and go ahead and type in turret, and we will see the new projectile that we created. So let's go ahead and have that in the class. So let's go ahead and compile, save, close, and test. Okay. I don't know if that's working any better or any worse than it was before. Still seems like it's bouncing a whole lot. Let's see why. So we're back in the projectile setting. I still have it to bounce. I have this down to 1. You know what? Let's take this down to 0.1. And actually, let's just get rid of bounciness altogether. Let's see what happens if we do that. Compile, save, close. I just want to double check and make sure that that actually took, that's the projectile that we're shooting. And it is the turret projectile. So let's hit close, play. Okay, so now it's happening, right? So now we can see that there is no bounce at all. So that's actually kind of bad because it just kind of stops right there. So let's go back to the projectile. Let's go back to projectile palace. Let's make it bounce twice. Let's see if that makes it fall on the floor. Like it gets hit and then it bounces and it falls on the floor. So we play. Nope, still getting stuck up there. So let's go back to projectile. Let's put the bounce back in, and then let's see what happens with 2 bounces. There we go. So it hits, and it pretty much now just hits and falls on the ground. Okay. Now that's good because as I go behind here, I can see that none of the balls are going to hit with enough force to be able to hit back at our cube. And really the only way this thing could get foiled would be if I had one cube sitting in front of another cube. Which I don't know. I mean, there's lots of funny movies where, you know, the 2 cannons face each other and then blow each other up. So anyway, so that is finally done with the turret and it shooting at us. So the rotating turret. The next project is going to be starting with the health bar. So now that we have something that can cause us damage, actually several things that can cause us damage, we now want to create a health bar in our next project so that we can eventually take damage. All right, so hope you enjoyed the video. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.